Go follow us on all the socials. Thank you for listening. I am Randy.
And I am Ken-zee.
Joining us in the studio tonight, we have a Air Force veteran, James. Right. And James, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey, excited to be here. I work I used to be in the Air Force for 10 years, so 2000 to 2010. My claim to fame is enlisted as a firefighter until I realized, like, that's no joke, like a real firefighter, not just like some, like fancy job. Those guys do exceptional work. Just the stuff that they did was so beyond anything I could dream of. But excited to talk about the topic today around our veteran organizations and how we can improve our veteran experience post-military.
Yeah, there's a lot of words in the world nowadays, in the dictionary, if you will. And one of the things like I struggle with is, what do we call a veteran that is coming back to the United States and working, and what is that? Because I know we joked about it earlier, and I know what you're about to say.
You're going to do this to me?
But I also laugh because you want to know what I did? I was trying to figure out the word to come up with it, and I thought I solved it, and then I found out that was what prisoners are called, reintegration. So I thought, you know what? I think I'm just going to let James speak to this. But yeah, what's wrong with veterans coming back? What's wrong with veterans coming back to the States to put their service behind them and now put forth service to the United States? What
to society? I mean, to put that whole life that you lived, eat, breathe, and sometimes unfortunately died for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge, right? Because, for example, for me, when I got out of high school, I went straight to basic training. And I'm a firm believer that every 18-year-old kid should go to basic training. It just you don't have to serve afterwards, but we need to get you into basic training just to square everybody away. Okay. You go from basic training into a tech school. And then from there, you're kind of considered like, okay, you're ready to serve the military. And I'm making this up a little bit, from week 2 or week 3 of basic training to the end of your career, you are reprogrammed in your brain to be this military, resource. Whether it doesn't matter if you're infantry or a police officer or just a data analyst, you're reprogrammed. And so what happens is then you really intensify that theory and that thinking when you go to war. Because every day, now I didn't deploy, I want to be clear with that, so I didn't get to experience a lot of what the men and women have dealt with, but every day is just, you're in there with your brothers and sisters, protecting them. That is your number one job. The vision and the goals are clear with what you're supposed to be doing for that day. And then you get back to the United States, and a lot of people that we're talking about, I think the term you're wanting to say is transitioning service members.
I'm sorry, that's the funniest phrase. Still the funniest phrase.
So what happens is,
I know that his brain's fucked right now. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing.
I'm trying to be. I understand the phrase and I understand the definition. Just in today's society,
come up with a better trick.
In today's society, it's just a completely different. Yeah. Idea that just flashes in front of your eyes when you say that.
So, transitioning service members or prisoners,
and I mean that in the utmost respect, by the way.
Yeah.
And as I said it, reintegration. Yeah, that's a fun way to phrase it, but that's what prisoners are described as, apparently. So, that right there is a struggle. I mean, we're laughing at one term that is official. Probably we're saying the other one that I found is stupid because it's based off of the prison system, not the military system. Go into that. What is it like? So, you land back here?
Yeah, I'm less worried about the title, but kind of to kind of catch back up, right? You go to these men and women go to war. Their number one job is to look after their brothers and sisters, and then they come back, and a lot of them, for whatever reason, decide, hey, I did my time honorably, right? Like, show me 20 people in wherever we're at, and only 2 will raise their hand to say, yeah, I'll go to war. So honorably come back. But for whatever time frame that is, whether it's 4 years, 8 years, 10, 20, there's this experience where they've just been completely rewired, and now they are being set off into the civilian sector. Mm-hmm. And there's a challenge with that too, is that I actually got into a pretty heated discussion with a very high-level general on this one time.
Hit us. If you can.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say names.
No, no names.
There was a lot of stars on the shoulder. I knew I was way over my ski tips on this, but my frustration was, okay, these service members come back and they're like, hey, I'm ready to go to the civilian world. The military, the DoD, has these transition programs. So it's I think it's called TAP, Transition Assistance Program.
Right.
It used to be Soldier for Life. And the experience that I got out of these programs was, you walk in there, and I'll never forget it. Like, I was part of a panel, and we're sitting there, and it was me and this guy that was in HR from the prison in Leavenworth.
Oh, reintegrating people.
And another guy from like Wells Fargo or something. I don't know. So
obviously.
So, we are their first interaction with civilian corporate sector. Mm-hmm. And that's the group you have up there. Okay. And so now what happened is, I'll never forget it. Their question was asked, what's it like being in HR? The question was to the prison HR guy. Okay.
That sounds like a stellar question to ask a prison HR rep.
Well, that's all they had, right? So that, and this particular individual asking the question was very they were in HR, and they were interested in going into HR. And before I could even like pick up the microphone, because I knew we were screwed. This guy gets up and he goes, I love HR. I hire and fire people every day. And I'm just, I'm just in all my feelings on this. And now here you have, and I remember it was an 05 that asked the question. So here's an 05 that has probably done a ton of homework, ton of studying, ton of stuff to get into HR. They get their one chance at this transition assistance program to talk to an HR representative. And the response is, I get to hire and fire people every day. They don't talk about career growth. They don't talk about how you can, support different programs and find.
It seems like the most short-minded answer that you could come up with. I get to meet people and say they can come in the door, or I get to ruin people's lives and say you no longer have an income.
Yeah.
But like the way that you almost express this is that they were jovial about that, and that's a weird fucking part of it too.
Yeah, and the reason I give that story is because that is the setup of what our service members, when they raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm ready to go to the civilian sector," we go, "Okay, cool. We're going to enroll you into the transition assistant program," and one of your first meetings is the dude from HR that's got the chain to his wallet, to his belt buckle, all the way down to his heel, and talking about hiring and firing, and that's all they do. So you're already starting from behind, and if I can, and tell me if I'm talking too much.
No, that's what you're here for.
Super passionate. Following that exact meeting, we had a strict timeline, like 43 minutes, get in and get out. And so I'm walking away, and this other guy comes up and he's like, get out your laptops. He's kind of like drill instructor yelling at these folks, and I kind of slow walk because I can't wait to hear what's going to be on the laptop. And he's like, I'm going to teach you guys how to write a resume. And I'm like, And so I remember I asked somebody, who's that? And they said, oh, that's our resume writer person extraordinaire. I go, oh, what's his background? Oh, he left the Army and went immediately into this role. I go, so he's got no corporate experience.
Like a funeral director, I'm assuming, or something fun like that.
Yeah, and it was just, so now you're starting to put and again, I want to be clear that these individuals are doing the best that they can. It's not against them. It's
a system. It sounds like that the support and the system is kind of lacking.
Right.
That's what I'm picturing as you're telling this story.
Yeah, my analogy that I use with in reference to this gentleman that got up, who's never done civilian sector, teaching about a resume, is the equivalent of like a flight simmer getting on your Southwest jet and going, all right, everybody sit down, I'm going to fly you.
So tracking back with what you just said, let's digest this. Guys are coming back, okay?
Men and women.
Sorry. People are coming back.
Yeah.
That's not.
I'm just giving you shit.
People are coming back. Service members are coming back.
Yeah.
What is the number one red flag day one that you believe exists?
The number one red flag that I believe,
like in terms of what could we fix for day one, like, hey, when you reintegrate or when you transition or when you become a veteran, whatever the term is here, what could we do to make day one better? Because my understanding is a lot of, and understand that I don't have infinite friends in this world like you do probably, but the ones that I do, I talk to, and I have a recent Navy guy who came back, and his wife was just getting back, and she was redeployed. They're both one's inactive, one's active. Neither here nor there. That's all bullshit. He was telling me just the reality of the day one smack, like getting back the day one slap in the face of like, okay, we told you what it's going to be like. We tried to get you a year program going ahead of time, but no one can prepare you for the bullshit for day one when you get back.
Yeah, so I think there's two honest truths here to answer your question. And the first one I probably wouldn't be allowed to say unless I served is, look, everybody, let me rephrase that. Everybody is beyond grateful for the service that our men and women provided to the country.
Absolutely.
Beyond that, there becomes a scale of how appreciative are you? No, that's not the Instagram videos where the guy says, hey, thanks for your service, and he holds out the tip Venmo thing. But it's so to answer your question of like, what's the number one red flag is, myself and a lot of people I know struggle with, man, we served your country, we deployed, we did all of these things, like, you kind of owe us. And you got to get that mentality out. I don't disagree. If it were up to me, if I were president, right? Like, yeah, we owe you a lot. You get, you see the guys with the 6-month deployment stripes on it, and it goes all the way up to their shoulder. You're like, yeah, you gave several years getting shot at.
Yeah.
So that our family can live freely.
So that Randy can buy shoes that we make fun of him for.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, that's where I wanted to go.
I got to call his out. He can call me out at any time. We obviously both buy bullshit, but where you're at with what you just said, what level of struggle is, okay, let me back this train up. What communication barriers exist between military life and then coming back to civilian life and attempting? So the reason that I say this,
for this,
there's a lot of bullshit that exists, and I think that a lot of it's breaking down right now, personally, and some of that is the accountability of our universities, our education system. And if you go and get $150,000 degree and that 4-year piece of paper and you're in debt, they still there's no guarantee the first day that they're done with that graduation and they're out for themselves now, right? And that's kind of the same way I feel about veterans, but veterans are doing it where somehow we've switched this dichotomy of, since like 1990, for instance, if you don't have the degree, we don't care if you're a veteran or not. You come back and you're a McDonald's employee because that's what you know how to do, or you don't fit our corporate role because you don't have the degree. And some of that, I think, is a huge fallacy in our system. So
let me address that, and then I want to back up to kind of build this whole picture. So when I left the military, I remember I applied at Sprint. Hopefully most people remember Sprint. It wasn't that long ago.
Heard of them.
But at the time, with what I was doing in the Air Force, I felt like I could do anything. And I was like, well, maybe I'll be the CEO, maybe CFO of Sprint. I don't know. Like, CEO probably has to travel a lot. I'll just sell with the CFO. And then you get hired as a business analyst 1.
Yeah.
You know, and your humble pie is just met at brute force to you. And so that's what I mean, where it's like, you know, where I wish we could express our thanks and have some type of congressional law that says, hey, you know, when you come back, you're going to get put into places like this and this. That's not going to happen. And what's wrong with veterans that are transitioning out of the military, it is that we're kind of set up for failure, where we go to this transition assistance program. And believe me, I've tried, guys. I'll talk to you in a minute about what we did. But you go to this transition assistance program, you're kind of in this weird, like, everybody's just trying to help their buddies out so they can come talk or sell Wells Fargo or whatever. And then from there you have a year to 6 months to find a job. But you have this program as your foundation. And unless you're reaching out and meeting with people, I meet with soldiers and airmen service members like 2 or 3 times a month. Hey, do you want to get coffee? Absolutely. I will clear my schedule to come see you so that we can talk about how we can set you up for your next chapter. That doesn't happen in this program. So the men and women that are going above and beyond, they're reaching out to guys like me or my peers to meet with them to better understand, like, hey, how do I grow this?
Yeah.
That's the first part. So the second part is, you know, you have, it's on average 200,000 service members leaving the military every year. Some will argue that the unemployment rate of those 200,000 is 3.7%, which is slightly below the, I think, as of whatever,
average or whatever.
Yeah, 4% of non-veterans. But what happens is you have these veterans that come in and their skill sets don't align with the jobs that they're applying for. Okay. And look, LinkedIn is such a, how do I say it? LinkedIn is a drug that people think if I hit a easy apply on for 4 hours, I'm going to get a job. Mm-hmm. It's like that serotonin hit or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Dopamine
I did
straight
it.
to the veins.
Dopamine. Yeah. I did it.
Yeah.
I applied for 400 jobs. So you have to be careful with, you know, all of these different pieces and places that you go to. So going back to that 200,000, there's going to be categories of people that fit every different job description in America.
Yeah.
And we have to do a better job of determining how do these individuals fit into the roles that they've got experience for. So mind you, 95% of the jobs in the military are transferable to the civilian sector.
Yeah. I mean, yes. The 5% that I would assume is pretty untransferable is the let's aim the rifle down range and shoot at something.
Yeah, they helped Captain Phillips out.
As I say, typically speaking, the 5% that's not transferable to corporate helps corporate. We just don't talk about it.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
So let's, from what you're saying, it really, it pisses me off a bit. I'll start with a newfound question here. Do we have the resources in this country to make this program or this transition for our service members better? And the reason that I say that is I don't know what your official affiliation is at this point, where, you know, are you doing this because you feel good about it and it helps people, or are you doing this because you're getting paid? And I think you're doing it because you feel good about it.
Definitely not getting paid.
Yeah. Again, I knew one of the answers was correct. So where I struggle then is if you're not getting paid, but you're doing this, you're feeling good, are there enough resources in this country to make this better?
Let me answer this. So obviously I don't know, like in a U.S. level, but in 2015, a buddy of mine and we started the Kansas City Veteran Coalition. So we organized 75 companies from around Kansas City to donate HR resources.
Yeah.
It was crazy. We kicked it off at Union Station in the Chambers boardroom there, standing room only, freaking out, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Didn't take $1, by the way. No donations. This is all volunteer. So the way we structured that was people that entered the KCVC would decide what they wanted help with. Do you want resume help? Do you want interview help? What do you need help with, right? So whatever they suggested, that would filter into the 75 different companies, depending on what their skill set was. Like if they were in HR, we put them with HR. If they were telecom, they'd come to us when we were at Sprint. Then we started expanding it further. And keep in mind, all 75 companies are like, we're 100% in. Not like, we'll give you the name so you can use it on your website.
Yeah.
So then we started doing Boots, a thing that we started called Boots and Cubes, where we invited service members, not just soldiers, service members, to do a day in the life at different companies. And on 2 occasions, we had 2 individuals get hired during the Boots and Cubes.
Nice.
Because they'd come in there and they'd be like, "Why's that? Why do you do it like that?" And somebody goes, "Oh, we never even thought of that." So my long story long here is...
Wait, before you tell this long story long, you're telling me these uneducated soldiers, military members, can point out things to the educated corporate world sometimes about how asinine things are. And I know you can't be quoted completely on this, but I know that's a trap. Let's just say sometimes the military knows how to cut some bullshit.
100%. And so your question was, is this scalable to support? Is what I do on an individual basis scalable to what we can do in a country? And I said, I don't know, but I will tell you that Kansas City, 75 corporations stepped in and said, we're in to help.
That was day one.
Day
right?
one.
Yeah.
We had a guy, so I'm giving this whole kickoff. The mayor pro tem is there. Everybody's there. And the guy gets up, he goes, I'll write you a check for $10,000 right now. And I said, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in keeping this about the veterans. And it was incredible. And COVID hit, absolutely scorched earth, everything. But at the time, we were averaging about 2.5 to 3 hires a month. The Pentagon flew in, scared the bejesus out of us because they're like, we want to talk to you. And you're like, oh, God, what do we do? And they came in, they're like, tell us the secret. We're like, well, it's no secret.
You just have to give a shit.
Yeah, and you have to have a community that gives a shit.
What was the point that you're like, we need to do this for them? And we need to make an organization to make this happen?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to my whole LinkedIn as a drug thing, is that you would have mechanics, wrench turners applying for, business analyst 5 on IT support. Mm-hmm. Those don't connect. And so what we wanted to do is figure out a way that we can contain that energy and point it in the right directions to this that meets their skill sets. Because forget veteran status for a minute. You apply for 500 jobs and you get 0 responses back. What's your first reaction?
My first reaction would be probably something's wrong with the resume if you're not getting any reactions.
Think worse, like I'm not good enough.
If you go to a personal, then yeah. Right? I'm not good enough. Something's wrong with me. Nobody wants me.
This guy went to, it's all their fault. I'm going to straight where you're going to just, I suck ass.
Yeah. No,
both are right answers. I just want to be clear.
I'm laughing because this motherfucker over here.
But you start to peel away the onion here, right? And you start realizing, okay, you've got all these men and women applying for jobs that may or may not actually technically fall into their skill set. They're not getting an interview. They're not even getting a response. I'm not going to point this directly to it, but by the way, we're averaging 22 veteran suicides a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's bad.
And so bad. When you said what caused, why did we do this? Why did 75 companies get involved? It's because we want to manage that energy so that the veterans have an opportunity at a job that they're skilled for, and get them an interview. I can't tell you how many times we got individuals interviews and they would call like they won the lottery. And I personally will respond a little annoyed, like, dude or dudette, you are such a qualified candidate. You should be like, hey, I finally got the interview. Like it shouldn't be like that's the hill that we took.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's it's the lack of education in terms of how are my skill sets transferable, where are they transferable to, how do you build the resume, how do you do I mean, some of the interviews, I'll just give you not a funny story. It's actually a really deep story. But one of the questions that we would ask in the mock interviews, we'd say, tell us about a time you had to deliver bad news. And it's me and two other guys, and then I want to call a lieutenant colonel in there, and he goes, oh, yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't ask this type thing. And we're like, oh, geez, what do we got? And he lost a troop. Troop was killed under his command. He had to call his parents. And, it shook us as the mock interviewees. We were just like, never heard that. He told the story so perfectly, like you were there with him, and then you go, hey dude, like that was heavy, I'm so sorry, but you can't tell that story to the first year college student that just is running HR when she or he asks you, tell me a time you gave a bad story, and you hit him with that.
Yeah, that actually jives with what was going through my mind of with this term that I still don't know the best way to phrase, because I giggle at yours and I laugh at mine. Reintegration, transitioning service members, whatever we're calling this. What level of struggle is it when an individual, when you see, like, okay, so not maybe you here personally, what level of struggle is it for an individual in the armed services to come back from Baghdad, and then the worst thing is the fucking water tastes a little weird at the water cooler.
Yeah.
Or, Sally in HR is a little slow with doing this, like compared to what they're used to and their environment, I can imagine that's probably fairly difficult. And
yeah, it's no comparison.
Yeah. By no means.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even trying to. I wasn't trying to make a comparison.
No.
Sorry. I was trying to make it sound
that's what
so
we want to do.
that there wasn't.
But that's the golden ticket. If you're like, here, here's what you experienced at Baghdad, and here's how it'll relate to, Telecom USA.
Good luck.
Man, you've solved everything, right?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this story. We a long time ago, there was a hire in our organization, and he was, I know I'm going to get killed for this, but he was one of the highest Army enlisted guys. So I don't know. I was Air Force. I don't know all the Army ranks. Command Sergeant Major. Don't kill me.
Fair for.
Don't at me. Anyways, this guy, rock solid, just absolute. There's nothing that you can give him that he's going to, and this is in the corporate environment now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing you're going to give him where he's like, oh man, like
I'm thrown.
Yeah. So what would happen is there was a gentleman that would give him assignments, and typical response in the military, particularly the Army, is the phrase too easy. Hey, go shovel the driveway. Too easy. Hey, do this. Too easy. Ended up getting a call from HR. They wanted to meet. They wanted to better understand what was going on. And this is several past lives ago, not current employer or anything like that. But ultimately what happened was the supervisor was interpreting the too easy as this is beneath him. Right? So
there was a language. Typically, there was a language barrier there.
Wait, there shouldn't be a language barrier there.
Shouldn't be, but there is. I mean, because you have somebody who's. I mean, let's take it for us.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Can I shorten what you're about to say?
Go ahead.
There are no fucking feelings in the military.
Yeah.
Corporate is full of fucking feelings.
There's that, but I mean, look at our world where we both work in a construction type atmosphere. You're going to hear a lot of things that aren't going to transfer to the real world, and you're going to have the same experience with the military. A lot of that stuff, phrases and everything, isn't going to transfer to the real world because people just don't understand, and they don't want to understand. people are in their own little bubbles and don't want to take the time to understand what somebody else has been through and what their experiences are. And maybe it's not offensive. That's just what they've been through.
100%.
Okay. You just you led the horse to water. Thank you, Randy. James, is ignorance bliss? I have a feeling between your corporate and your military background, you might have a weird blend here.
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
It's a tough question.
I know it's a tough question, but it's it's 3 words. Is ignorance bliss? But everyone says ignorance is bliss. Is ignorance bliss is a question. Is ignorance bliss?
Randy, what would you say?
What would I say? You know what? That is such a tough question.
I'm way just looking for a yes or no.
Well, I know, but it's just not as simple as yes or no.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying, ignorance is bliss in a haunted house, yeah, I guess. Is ignorance bliss when...
But, whoa. Haunted house is you paid for an adventure. I'm asking...
All right, here's how I want to answer it.
Hang on. I'm asking in the perspective, is ignorance bliss in terms of military coming back to the real world and civilian life? And where corporate and the people that are standing up are.
Here's the problem. Ignorance is not bliss, and here's why. Because you have and we'll use that story for example, you have a military service member come back. They are ready to incorporate themselves into the corporate world. And the people that they encounter on a daily basis, you could say ignorance is bliss to them. But the problem with that is it's not to that service member. And the reason I'm saying that is because they are ignorant to everything that person's been through, their vernacular, the phrases they use, like you brought up, and it has real world consequences, unfortunately, for that service member. Because like you said, now you have somebody who's ignorant, and it doesn't bother them in the corporate world, but now you have this service member who is sitting in HR having a meeting because he used a phrase that he used every single day, which basically meant, you got it, I'm on it.
Mm-hmm. Or how many times has a guy gotten in trouble from this environment in the opposite said, and I'm ready to kick this one to James, but how many times has the opposite occurred where a guy said something like, this project is so foobar we can't see straight, and all of a sudden that's an issue?
Yeah, so I think now that I kind of understand.
How many words are struggling? Like, how many words do veterans struggle through because they cut through the bullshit in their train, and then they get into a be sensitive?
But I'm gonna answer your question. So the first point that I had with what's the red flag that you asked earlier is, while everybody appreciates your service, they're not necessarily going to monetize that or transact that. They're going to thank you and that's it. So that's the first pill you got to swallow.
Give a shit is, I think, what you were looking to say.
Fair. There. The second piece, to answer your question, is the whole understanding what you did or what the service member did and stuff like that. While it's important, I'm going to be very blunt to the veteran community that's listening. It's, you've got to kind of close that chapter. You have to close that chapter, because what happens is when you start trying to intertwine your past experiences into, what you're doing in the corporate world, they're not going to mesh. And I've always said you have 90 days to, if you hire a service member that just got out of the military, to essentially, corporatize them. I can't tell you how many times at Kansas City Veteran Coalition we had people that were hired at great organizations and left within 60 days to go to the Northrop Grumman's or the whatevers, because that's their comfort zone. And I'm not saying the companies failed on that, but that 90 days is so unbelievably critical, because if you don't, then you get into the too easy issues. You get into all of these things that are, it's almost like a reverse basic training. If I had to, you remember when I talk, like, week 2, you just, you're reprogrammed.
Their brains basically have to be debriefed. So, I mean, and re-assimilated back into, the real world doesn't work like this. Yeah. It doesn't have people, people don't work on, perfect example. My parents got divorced when I was 13. My mom got remarried, moved across the country to a ex-Air Force. I moved in day 1. My world was flipped upside down. The bed was made the second you got out of it. If you said you were going to be there at 5 o'clock, you were there at 4:45.
Yeah.
And there was no excuse why you weren't.
Yeah.
And I had never lived a life like that. And while I'm not trying to compare it to it, he did live that life, and he was 20 years removed and still living that schedule and those taught. It's just, it's crazy how hard it is once you learn those things. Like me, ex correctional officer, I'm always looking at doors still. I have no reason to be paranoid and looking at doors and watching my surroundings, but it's just once you get it in your brain, for some reason your brain has such a hard time letting it go.
And then you flip to kind of what you're talking about, where when you're in basic training, you get reprogrammed, but you also kind of keep some of those core memories, some of those core characteristics.
Okay.
I remember I smiled during my basic training photo. I was the only guy that smiled.
Mm-hmm.
Like to have fun, like to party.
What an idiot.
Yeah. Nobody, like they saw me and they're like, yeah, we're screwed this year.
Look at this guy.
But then on the flip side, when you're coming back into the corporate world, you have to also make that delineation, right? Like, here's some of the things that I need to get rid of. For example, when I went to Sprint, I started scheduling 7 o'clock meetings.
How'd that go?
Corporate world? How the fuck did you pull that off? I call people at 7:15 that are supposed to be in the office at 7 and they're not.
I've got PTSD from those because duty day starts at 7, and then people would roll in at 7:30, and then what was worse is they'd take their cell phone out and put it on the table, and I'm like, I'm gonna lose my mind. And I finally had a veteran come to me, a Sprint veteran, Navy guy, super smart guy. He's one of my mentors to this day. He's like, you got to stop that crap now. You're going to get killed. And so you start going to that, detached basic training in the corporate world, and you got to figure out what are the things that you want to hold on to and what are the things that you want to get rid of.
Okay.
And those are and I wish there was like a checklist. Here's the things that you hold on to, but there isn't. It's all what's up here for you and what you're willing to let go versus, keep and potentially struggle with.
So I know that I was just giggling, and I know that with what you said, it came up with a question here. Is it on the corporate responsibilities? Is it on the companies here to hire veterans and recorporatize them? Or should we be doing something via the military to bring these people back and bring them back into a more ready state of mind? I'm not trying to sound offensive here, so those words are very weirdly chosen, but
it should be both. But if I had to point the finger at one organization, it'd be at the military. And that's what the general and I argued with. And I didn't really get to finish that story, thank God, but I'll finish it now.
Let's hear it. I do want to hear this.
No, it's just basically your transition program is garbage. I can help you out. He stiff-armed me. I reattacked like an idiot. And what I learned was the military, in their defense, has a tough job. They don't want to make the transition program. And this is just James's opinion, by the way. This is not,
we understand that.
This is not a doctrine or anything. But the military has, if you make that transition program too successful, then what happens?
Everybody wants out.
Well,
bye, Felicia.
Yeah, when your 4 years is up, I can re-enlist, or they can get me into this program and I can become CEO of the bank next week, and I think I'm going to take the bank job.
Well, there's a lot to be said for that. And the other thing that I would question with that, and not to negate from this point at hand, but how many service members transition to a different branch, or how many service members are enticed to stay because the corporate world just they can't cut it. They, to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. Just to be point blank,
right? Right.
But I would absolutely love to meet those individuals and do kind of a debrief. How did you get to the point where you decided there's no organization in America that wants to hire me?
So I know one of these individuals, and I'm not, we won't be naming names, we won't be going into their history or what branch or any of that, but let's just say they transitioned from color to color, and they've been eligible to get out for a long time. But every time that they go this is a person with a lot of charisma. He, a good dude. He can talk to anyone. He's got friends everywhere. He's talked about, if I got out, what could I go do?
Right.
And he's come to me and he said, I don't know anywhere that I wouldn't be fired from HR or whatever, entity at B, because I can't deal with the level of dumb that we got to. And I know that that's a tough thing to speak to. So don't misunderstand. We're all opinions here, but this is a real human who has told me I don't know how I could come back in that sense.
Yeah. So and fortunately or unfortunately, right, that individual is not alone. I would argue.
No, he's not. He's not alone.
200,000 people leave the military every year. So I would argue 10,000, if not more, are in the same boat. Now, here's what I would say is, one, you gotta adjust your attitude. It's no different than when you join the military.
Yep.
You have to adjust you have to adapt. What's the number one thing that we always say in the military? Adapt and overcome. We have to adapt and overcome. And that is number one. Like, and then number two is, if he's sitting there saying, like, I couldn't put up with the dumb, I would really like to see what his day-to-day activity is, because I'm willing to bet a large soda or beer that he's probably putting up with a lot of dumb, but it's just common for him.
So I will tell you this individual is currently in Seoul, South Korea. That's where I'm gonna.
No,
he currently isn't aware. He is not here to face the dumb, but he has been here back and forth many a time. And
no matter where you go,
yeah,
I don't care if you're at the. I'm trying to come up with a good excuse that doesn't get me in trouble, but it doesn't matter where you go. There is always going to be a infantry of dumb,
right?
And what
100%.
separates you from the other folks, and this is what I would tell him, is you have to figure out how to speak to those individuals to get them to move forward. And it's no different than when you took on a new platoon or a new group of basic training. All they knew was how to shine your boots and tie them, and you were able to figure out the connectivity to get them to the next spot.
Yeah.
And it's, look, I get it. It's tough. It's scary. It's just everything that outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But if you can unlock 2 out of the 3 of those things, you're going to be set up for success.
You brought up that whose responsibility is it? The corporate side or the military side? And you also made a few statements about, you have to understand that when you get out, you need to get out of your head the military and understand you're going back to civilian life, and it's part of that life. I'm just commenting from a civilian standpoint, and from what I've seen and I've heard a lot online. I don't agree with this. I think that military should get preferential treatment, but I do see a lot of people comment that that's what they signed up for. It's a job. They get paid for it. I think a lot of service members that I've spoken to, yes, they signed up knowing it was a job.
Yeah.
Not all of them knew what the job would entail.
Well, the job description is pretty vague.
It's very vague, and sometimes you don't.
It's very different than a corporate job description. Absolutely.
It's not something that you can map out every single situation, what you're going to see on a daily basis and what your job description is going to be. So with that being said, I do think it's the military's responsibility, because they're bringing these people in and getting the funding, and they're not doing anything on the back end. They're doing everything on the front end to make sure that their machine's rolling along, but they're not helping people reassimilate. And then I think corporate has a little bit of responsibility too, because we have the people that are, well, you signed up for it, you're nothing special. Like, I don't agree with that either. I mean, I don't think you need to special treatment, but at the same time, I don't think the corporate world understands what some of these people have had to endure, because they have just not taken the time to talk to these people.
What I question immediately is it the fiduciary responsibility of the shareholders? Is it in their best interest to help out veterans?
I personally think that, yeah, I think it is, because you have a lot of these companies who have built names around veteran-owned, that they hire veterans. They have made really good names for themselves because they have hired them. And not only that, but these veterans have put forth great products, great work, great everything that they do, and have made a great name for the company. So there's companies out there that hire only veterans. Mm-hmm. There's some that hire no veterans. And in the corporate world, I guess that's fair, because, you know, once you get back into civilian life, you're not guaranteed a job. You're not promised that job. So I do give kudos to the companies that take veterans in, and give them a little bit of precedence, especially when they have the equal qualifications.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you, though, is when veterans come back, why isn't companies lining up to hire them? Is it because of that transition so hard, or is it just they're uneducated, or what is the biggest challenge that we need to do as a society to bridge military and the corporate world together?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot to do with how we built the KCVC model, where we met you halfway, right? You're transitioning out of the military. You've done all the silly programs. We're going to meet you on the other side of this and go, okay, here's what it really looks like. Mm-hmm. And then help foster those conversations that, sorry, my mic's probably all messed up here.
You're good, man.
Foster those conversations of where we think you'll fit. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately it's, if we're just trying to do this boil the ocean thing where, you know, 200,000 people get out and we're going to find them 200,000 jobs, don't care where they're at, you're not helping.
No.
You're hurting the cause.
Yeah.
So it's how do you take that 200,000, you trickle it down to by city, take that subset and go, okay, you know, we've got 20 that want to go into telecom, 10 that want to go into construction, 5 that want to do this, 4 that want to, and then you start aligning and that's what I'm saying about meeting them in the middle. Now, it doesn't mean that the companies that have volunteered to meet them in the middle are going to hire them, but what it does do is help build that foundation of saying, okay, you're a finance bro or a broette. Here's what finance broette or bro work looks like in the civilian sector. We're going to bring you on to see what it's like. And oh, by the way, we're going to use our network to connect you to people that are hiring.
Yeah.
But it can't be, and again, you know, nobody's going to argue that we don't owe you everything. But the attitude cannot be, we're here, you should hire me because I served your country. Mm-hmm. It has to be more three-dimensional than that. And that's just the unfortunate truth. I wish it was different. Mm-hmm. And that's what the KCVC set out to do, is undetach or detach that logic to say, okay, you've done X, Y, and Z. And oh, by the way, all of that is transferable into the corporate workforce. Mm-hmm. And how do you tell your story?
And I think a struggle that I would have, and that's just me taking my job that I have now. If you take a high-ranking official and say, all right, we're going to integrate you into the corporate world now. Here's your transition period. And you put them into day one telecoms. How hard is it to go from, because if you took me and put me, I don't want to say that I'm too good for jobs, because in a certain situation, I will take anything, if need be, to survive. But if you were like, hey, I'm going to take you from major and I'm going to put you into a service rep, how hard is that to swallow your pride and jump into a position that's no longer that high-ranking official? Does that something you come across quite often?
100%. And it's not that extreme. It's way more minuscule than that. You know, there are grandiose visions of what we as the military should be in the corporate workforce. And it is, you know, if it was a 100-yard football field with 100-yard being where we think we should be, we're about 95 yards off. Okay.
Yeah.
It's bringing a sand wedge when you need a pitching wedge type thing for the golf.
You know, I suck at golf enough to have done that.
Well, I do it, and I play golf all the time. So, but it's level setting those expectations, because I think you bring up an excellent point. Is I didn't really apply for the CEO of Sprint, but I jokingly was like, yeah, that CEO, CFO, I can probably do either.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like business analyst one. Biggest gut punch I've ever had.
Yeah.
And I had two choices there. I can gobble this up and be the best that I can be, and ended up becoming a director at Sprint. Very proud of that. Or I can go, this is what I'm talking about. Corporate world hates veterans, and you know what? I'm just going to go on to the next thing. And the next thing is not going to get me a director role. It's just going to hire me into the same role, maybe a little bit of different title. And so that's where it just boils down to, is you have to have a little bit of humility when you come into the corporate workforce. There is not going to be another experience that you're having in the corporate workforce in most cases that you have in the military.
Yeah.
Just point blank. It's how you sell those services of what you've done, and you know, sell that to HR. And you know, I was always amazed with the conversations I had during mock interviews with the service members. You know, have you ever had an HR issue? Oh, let me tell you about the time somebody didn't get promoted. Huh, weird. We've got that issue over here, you know. Tell me a time about somebody didn't get paid enough. Oh, we got that, you know. And all of a sudden you start building this Rubik's Cube with the hope that once it all unlocks, it like unlocks their brain, and they're like, oh my God, I can do civilian workforce. I'm not worried about the title. I know I'm going to crush it. Just get in the door and then rage.
It's almost like the military, I know this will sound weird. It's almost like the military has a corporate aspect and the corporations have a military aspect, which don't blend well when you meet HR. And the reason that I say that is you have a lot of military members who could probably come into corporate, get you done, do what they need to do. Like you said, I could go in there, I could do this, I could do that. And okay, I'll eat my humble pie, thanks. I'll be business analyst one, and then jump up to director, right? I think there's a mental breakdown, though, that the military is, so to speak, a corporation. And I know that that's not something that probably a lot of military members want to speak to, but in the sense of a corporate world, just like rankings of a corporation, military members, I mean, if you're not this, you're not going to have a clearance. You're not going to have access. If you're not this, you don't have top secret clearance. You have this secret access. And in corporate, I mean, it's the same way.
So you're saying there's a hierarchy that exists in both, which is very true.
I guess I'm making the claim that, okay, tell me how fucking crazy I am. Let's start there.
Okay.
Very.
Thanks, Randy.
You're welcome.
The corporate world and the military have a lot of similarities.
100%.
And the only difference is HR.
No, I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay. So, all right.
I would say that HR is the gatekeeper, though, because if you look at the military and you look at the corporate world, if HR came out to where I work and sat down for 5 minutes, none of us would have jobs. We just had to get past them to get into the hardcore of what we do and what it takes to get things done. And I guarantee HR would have a heart attack if they were with us for 5 minutes.
That was like rugby, where I lateral the ball to Randy. He ran it into it, put down the touch. He's exactly right. Where I come from is, if military is corporate-like, corporate's corporate-like, the difference comes from military is we will solve it. I'm sorry if your feelings get in the way. Corporate is we will solve it. We have to make sure that feelings are felt. And I wonder what you can speak to a potential dichotomy of veterans in that workforce?
Whew.
Is that sorry if that's shitty. Sorry if that's shitty.
I think
it wasn't meant to be.
I would disagree slightly that the fact that military wants to solve stuff and screw your feelings. I think there is extreme examples of that where it's like, hey, we got to go kill this guy named Bin Laden, and we're just gonna go do it, right? I don't care. I don't care about anything. But the day-to-day operations, I will tell you that the military does an exceptional job of protecting the service members. Because at the end of the day, whether it's corporate world or the military, if you don't have a cohesive workforce that can get along and understand the mission and be able to have that psychological safety and say, hey, you know, I'm nervous, then the whole thing breaks. And in the military's case, people could die. In the corporate space, projects could fail.
No, can I correct you? In the corporate space, money can be lost.
That usually be
it's not
the
a
bottom
project.
line.
You can say projects be failed.
Sure,
but the bottom line is money be lost.
Yeah, but my point is the same. Is that and I think that's one of the advantages that we have in this conversation is that with the military and the corporate workforce, there has to be a level of teaming and support, because the minute you create a position where somebody doesn't want to speak up and there is a wrench left on the flight line or a bolt missing in the bomb.
Yeah.
And, well, I wanted to speak up, but Command Sergeant Major was going to yell at me for the third time today. I didn't want to deal with it. Well, great. We just torched a $50 million airplane. You know, you have to have, and that is not a veteran or corporate argument. That is a generation argument.
Yeah.
Right? Like
accountability.
And I think what Ken-zee was trying to say too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were trying to compare the two, more the military is you tap your dude in the nuts and say, come on, let's go, fucker, we got a job to do. And in the corporate world, you have to say, hey, Jared, come on, we've got a meeting now. We need to be in the boardroom by 8 a.m.
I guess.
And there's a different approach to that camaraderie and that workspace.
Yeah, I mean, they're both results driven. And
absolutely,
let's be clear. If your results driven is money and you got people in the market, great. If you're a military, your result is power. I mean your goal is power.
Yeah.
So where it comes to effective solutions taking less time or less HR or less this or less that, you break down corporate bullshit real quick.
You cut out the fuckery.
Let's talk about culture for a minute, because for the military, for me, the culture was always protect your brother and sister. You're always in there. The culture in corporate America is more evolved, and candidly, what I love about it is protect your brother and sister, but also protect the program. Be safe, do all these different things. And, you know, the argument of like, why is this different? It's because this is the military and this is the corporate world. Point blank, period.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where I get rubbed sideways, not with you, but with conversations is, I've had people speak up and be like, the corporate needs to be more about like the military. Like, oh, okay, boomer.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Good luck with that.
Okay. Yeah. We'll put that on page 1.
Yeah.
You know,
solved.
Yeah. And that's the problem, right? Is because what happens is you these expectations of like, again, they owe me, we need to do this. They need to do this. They need to be able to do all these things where I can, you know, give Jimmy a swirly and be okay with it and not have to get fired. All of those things where it's like, no, man, like that was that business.
That was a past life.
Look at Wolf of Wall Street.
Yep.
Yeah. Culture. Culture, right? I mean, all the crazy things they did, that was their culture. You take any of those employees and put them into a local company here, right? It's going to be a culture shock.
It'll be weird.
Yeah. And
shit would get weird.
And that's where it gets to the individual adapting to the culture.
It's never going to be the same. And oh, by the way, we're not going to meet you halfway on the Wolf of Wall Street.
No.
What was that? Stratton Oakmont. We're not going to meet you halfway at Stratton and Oakmont and be like, okay, fine, we'll bring in zoo animals and stuff.
Right.
This is our culture, and that's the same with the military coming into the corporate world. You have to evolve. You have to adapt and overcome.
So what is this? The third nuclear bombshell that's.
So I wrote a paper, a white paper. I haven't published it yet.
Okay.
Probably shouldn't say that. Oh, because I'm afraid of the outcome of it. Just a bunch of people hate me. But when we did this KCVC thing, there was a lot of people that hated us because of the money that was offered to us that we declined. We never took $1, ever. And I never wanted to, because then it becomes transactionable, and then...
It's a weird reason to hate somebody over.
I'm glad, great transition. I'm glad we briefed this.
A true nonprofit.
So,
right?
The third piece of this as to, and this is just my opinion, so, you can come at me if you want, but there's a significant amount of grant money in the sphere. And we have all of these organizations that position themselves to help veterans, to position themselves to help transitioning service members get into the corporate workforce. And they apply for these grants and stuff like that, and it gets approved.
With no oversight.
But when you start looking at the books and, okay, what have you done for me lately? There starts to be a gap. I reference an individual. I gotta be very careful how I phrase this, but I reference an individual that was giving resume services and all sorts of stuff and some type of commitment to hire, and that individual had never been in the workforce, corporate workforce. They came straight from the military into this consulting gig, and grant money was there, so keep it coming. And so that's kind of the third challenge that we have. The first two that we talked about, right? Like, how do you get the military to be a little bit more cohesive with setting them up for success? How do you get this corporate world to meet them halfway? Those are fairly achievable challenges. But then you bring in this third nuke, this third wheel, which is noise. And now you have guys that have, call it an hour a day. Now they have to choose. Do I want to go to this person that seems to know what the hell they're talking about? Or do I want to go this path where through the transition program and into the corporate workforce? And, the people that I interacted with at KCVC was mind-boggling. $99 for a resume review with no corporate experience from the reviewer.
Interesting.
So if you think about it, you got one bullet to fire.
Wow.
Yeah, I told you it was gonna be a nuke. You got one bullet to fire. Do you shoot it that way or do you shoot it that way?
Can we back this train up for a second? I want to make sure I understand this. This was this is a Nintendo 64 golden gun with a bullet, right? But this was
gonna be Odd Job.
This was
Odd Job.
This was a veteran Odd Job was a cheat code because he was too short, so you had to aim down.
They all have to say that.
You got to go big head mode.
But am I understanding what you're saying is that are some veterans scamming other veterans? Is that what you're saying?
100%.
Fuck.
And that is
fuck.
That is awful and discouraging to hear.
Okay, I need you to back this fucking train up.
I'm going to be very high level because I don't
need you to go into docs or details, but fucking help me understand this, James, because I did not expect to hear that tonight. I thought we were going to have a good time, have fun. We talked about this, man, but
it's just one of those things, man, where
I did not realize that you were about to say,
I told you it was a nuke.
In kind, we're going to hurt our own kind.
Let me be clear, and I'm not even going to try to defend them because that's not what I'm about to say, but these organizations have a feeling that they have unlocked something, and that's what they're offering. And I still remember...
They're life coaches.
I wouldn't even give them that.
I mean, that's what they're selling.
Yeah, but no, that's what they are. They're life coaches for veterans that are founded by veterans.
And I mean, if you look at it, life coaches overall is just a pyramid scheme to begin with.
I'm not sitting here gonna put my opinion on life coaches because I'm sure there are good ones.
I'm sure there is,
but where I'm at with it is what you're telling me is there are individuals within the system that are proclaiming themselves to be help you, fuck you in the end,
and getting good money to do it. Apparently from grants.
All right, I'm gonna shut up now.
No, that was the thing for us is if at any point somebody questioned our intent with KCVC, we'd show them our books, which would be an Excel sheet with nothing
on it.
Right. Yeah. Because I never, ever wanted to lose the vision that we are solely dedicated to help our veterans. And what blew me away was the amount of people that offered to write us checks, the amount of corporation.
But that's all they wanted to do. They didn't want to give you time, right?
No, they wanted to give us time too.
Okay.
I want to be clear. In their defense, they were like, we want all of it.
So they were on board, all in head first.
Yep.
Awesome.
And then all of a sudden, you're like, I remember it was a guy raised his hand. He said, I'm willing to write a check right now for $10,000. I said, I really appreciate that, but I'm going to decline. I just want your help. And people lost their minds on this little third dimension.
Wait, you had a new idea and people didn't like it? That can't possibly be, James.
But it was you start to see this third dimension and you're like, why are these people hating me? Why can't we collaborate and stuff like that? And what I ultimately realized is I was a bank robber. Potentially, they didn't know we weren't taking any money. But
it's a very odd career choice after you get out of the military. Is bank robbing.
I've played some Grand Theft Auto, so
plenty of experience. Sounds like you can write a resume after playing that game.
Number one on my resume. And so do I think this third nuke that I dropped? Do I think it is the majority? Absolutely not. But I will tell you, using your Golden Gun reference, that there are individuals out there across the country who have one bullet to shoot based on time, money, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of them are taking that shot, and to kind of wrap up this conversation, that is a causation of you raise your hand to say, I'm leaving the military. You go to the TAP program. You learn from the guy with the 12-foot chain from his wallet to his belt. It talks about hiring and firing. Okay, that was a bust.
Yeah.
Then you apply for 400 jobs on LinkedIn. That was a bust. You got to figure out corralling. And then you go to this third dimension, and now you spent the last couple dollars you had for this endeavor. You have to bring all that down and be able to say, look, we're going to combine forces with the TAP program in corporate America. We're going to do this. We're going to help you so that when you leave here, you may not have a job, but you're going to have the foundation of how to get a job and what to expect out of that.
What a lot of people don't understand either is how little military members actually get paid. There is some perks with it, but not much. Yeah. With that being said, what is the pay structure day one? I say, I'm retiring. Does your paycheck just stop that day?
So I don't know. I didn't retire.
Okay.
I did 10 years and got out. I don't know how that works. I mean, I know you get a pension and stuff like that.
I just didn't know if there's a period from where all right, you did your 4 years and I'm out.
Oh, so in that example, yeah, you're
that's day one. Yeah. You're done. Yeah. Well, I if you were a lifer, I understand. Right. You got your pension and all that stuff. Yeah. But you do your 4-year commitment and say, all right, I'm not re-enlisting. Yeah. Your paycheck stops that day.
Yeah, the last
within a month or two.
Exactly.
And so these servicemen and women, they don't have long to make this transition because, like I just said, the pay is not great. So it's not like they've got $500,000 sitting in the bank from their 4-year tour, and they're just going to live off of that for 5 years until they find the right fit. I have to find a job now, and a lot of it's probably spent. What money they do have is probably spent moving back to where they were from or used to being, and transferring their possessions, moving their family. And a lot of times if a wife has a job, she has to up and quit her job to move back to where you're from.
Yeah. So when we did KCVC, the greatest thing that we ever were exposed to are the men and women that came to us 12 months or 6 months before their separation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, thank God, right? Like,
absolutely.
We've got a game plan.
You got time to work with.
100%.
Yeah.
What ultimately, it really mentally ruined me was the men and women that came to me a week before they got out.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a family. We all have families. We can all relate. And there was not a lot I could do. And part of me was frustrated with like, hey, you knew about us. Why didn't you contact me 12 months ago? But that's, I can't tell everybody to think the same way I'm thinking. That would be wrong. So yeah, in a lot of instances,
at the same time, they're still doing a job. They have a job to do that
but I go back to TAP where it's like, hey, you need to set these guys up and say, hey, if you're deciding in December of 2025 that you're done, then just so you know, if you don't have anything lined up on January 1st, 2026, you have no paycheck.
Yeah.
And instead it's this, take out your computer, I'll teach you how to write a resume, with a guy that never had a cool job.
What do you think? If you could say something to people enlisted currently, to enlisted service members, and it was anyone from just got in to just got, looking to get out, what would you, it sounds like you're recommending that service members be much more upfront to their exit strategy.
No.
Again, I'm not trying to quote you. I'm trying to understand, what is the breakdown that some service members come to you a year ahead of time, some don't. How would you break this up, and how would you solve the problem of, okay, let's get everyone an exit strategy 6 months ahead of time, 12 months ahead of time? Yeah. What would you say? What would you do to rectify that?
So I'm going to take my lessons learned, nothing to do with anything that we're talking about.
We're talking to you, not the military.
So, I think the first thing I would say is be agile, because if I'm talking to the individual that's day one of their military career, be agile. Go look at me. Hey, do you want to be a firefighter? It pays more scholarships. Like, yeah, that looks fun. Like, holy shit! Like, that building's on fire and we're going into it right now. Like,
let's do it.
Like, that sounds like a horrible idea.
But I'm in.
But be agile and flow to, if you're not going to be somebody that's going to be in the military for 20 years, flow to positions that are transferable. Communications, firefighter, police, all of those things. The second thing I would tell myself in through these folks is, you're gonna have to be comfortable with uncomfortable.
Embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck.
That's the Battle Within's mantra.
You're gonna
embrace the suck.
I tell people this all the time. You're gonna have to meet with people to expand your network. Network is beyond anything more valuable than a resume or anything.
Absolutely.
And it's who you know, not what you know.
Yeah, and when what I tell people, and by the way, I'm also struggling with this too, is you're going to meet with people that aren't going to give you the time of day. It's like speed dating. You're just going to have to get over it, right? That one didn't work out. On to the next one. So don't get in your head. Just be, embrace the suck and figure out a way to build your network. And the last one that I'm very blessed is have fun. And I know that's like so cliche, but there has been times in my life where I haven't had fun. And it was a struggle. And now it's like, hey, yeah, like this, hey, this sounds like some serious shit we're talking about right now. Like, hey, anybody got a good joke?
Right.
And you know, for me, it's just, and again, I'm talking to me right now that was
years old,
but be agile, embrace the suck, and have fun. Because the more fun you have, the better opportunities are going to present to you. If you just sit there and go, this sucks, nobody wants to talk to me. I easy applied to 700 LinkedIn jobs and nobody responded to me. Yeah, you're going to have a tough time.
Well, to me, LinkedIn is just one giant social media platform. I can't imagine it being used on a regular basis for finding good jobs. I've been on LinkedIn for like 5 years and have all kinds of qualifications, and I don't even think I've had one person reach out to me ever. So they're not in the market to find you jobs. They're in the market for you to pay extra
for premium,
for your premium package. So we'll put you in front of a few people if you give us money.
Are you just now figuring out that LinkedIn's a subscription service?
No.
Okay, I was just making sure. I was just making sure that you weren't held back in any way.
No, I'm just saying that it is just one giant social media platform for people to thank or congratulate you on your yearly anniversary for work. But with that being said, James, usually we do a final thought when we wrap up. That way you can say anything you want to say. I just want to say thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your service, helping everybody that is service members, and the transition period, because I know it can't be easy for them, and I don't know what it's like, and I'm glad I don't, but I'm glad there's people out there like you that's doing it for the right reasons. So thank you for that. And Ken-zee, you got anything?
There are a lot of people that I've talked to that are willing to help out veterans in a lot of ways, and it some of them sound sketchy. And I just ask you in general, like, is the only way that we can do better to step up more and people keep doing, whether it be, white market, black market, gray market ideas for veterans, is the only way to continue pushing the narrative?
I think at the end of the day, it boils down to, if you have somebody that's willing to help you and they're not having their coffers out for $1, mm-hmm. then take it. You know what I tell everybody? Look, you're going to send your resume to 100 different people and you're going to get 100 different opinions. Mm-hmm. No different than what we're talking about here. The only roadblock or barrier I'd put up is if somebody says, hey, can you look at my resume? They say, sure, $99. Then, so I would, to kind of put a bow on this, and Randy, what you were saying is, look, I'm here to help. I love coffee, and I'll buy anybody a cup of coffee that has served our country. And I will do whatever I can to help them out. And I know at least 100 different other folks that would be willing to do that.
Yeah. What you got there? Talk about it.
I don't know where the cameras are, but
talk about it. Show us your tits. Talk about
it. Tack Coffee Co.
Yeah. So one of the great opportunities I have is I'm the honorary wing commander out of the 442nd at White Air Force Base. Make sure you look out for those guys. The A-10's coming to an end. We're trying to figure out the next flying mission.
Good boys. Good boys.
Of stuff. But there are two guys that started the company that fly the A-10. They attack coffee. I drink it every day, probably too much.
We all do.
But, they kind of started it as this kind of like fun hobby, and mm-hmm. now the demand is just extraordinary. And it's not because of their cool swag, it's because of the taste. And I hated coffee. And I remember one of the guys was like, hey, just try it with this and this. And, we're Mr. Kim said over there. And next thing you know, it's like, yeah, give me it. So I appreciate that. I would challenge or advise all of your listeners or YouTubers to say, go check out Attack Coffee. If you don't like coffee, the swag is incredible.
Well, I'm going to go look. I love coffee.
I just bought a shirt today.
We recommend everyone check out veteran-based businesses everywhere. Yeah. And I say that wholeheartedly. Thank you for being here.
Thank you guys. This was awesome.
This has been incredible.
It was therapeutic for me, to be honest with you.
Well, you came in. Okay. Can we go one step further in final thoughts, Randy?
Sure, go ahead.
It's past my bedtime.
James, you came in here. You're you're in our, guest bedroom podcast here. You came in nervous.
Yeah.
And you're a military service member. You're a badass. You've done lots of things. You've had
ran into burning buildings.
You've had an illustrated career.
Technically, I didn't.
No, you didn't go into the burning building?
Went into one from a distance.
Yeah.
But you're nervous. What has you nervous here? I'm curious to know. I know this is very new to the typical service member. The typical service member is out doing shit that's real, not talking behind a microphone and, here with us.
No, I've always considered myself better served behind the scenes. I don't need all the stuff. I don't need this stuff. Like, I'm going to do what I can to support our service members, regardless of a podcast or not. The other piece that I was nervous about is just that there's hard truths, right? And it's scary talking about that. And I want to be clear, like, I don't mean I have the utmost respect for our veterans. As a veteran, I have the utmost, but there are just some of these hard truths that you have to talk about where it's like, hey, these are the realities, embrace it, embrace the suck. And oh, by the way, I got your back. I'll be the buddy system or wingman system. If you need something, holler. So,
well, that's good to know. And thanks for everything. Go check out Attack Coffee.
We'll have some other links below for things that James mentioned earlier too.
Absolutely, 100%. Thanks again, James.
Thanks, guys.